Hello there, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you once again on this here Shabbat. I hope all you folks have been blessed and had a good week. And I thank you for watching the videos and for any new subscribers, for comments left. Today, I want to talk about something that is, I would say probably right now at this moment, the biggest thing in the news and under discussion, and it is about the ICE going around rounding up these people that came across the border illegally, and the outcry from the bleeding hearts, if you will. And I'm not saying that we're not supposed to be compassionate towards people that are escaping persecution or being singled out for their religious belief or persecuted because of a tyrannical government. But we have a process by which we determine these people, whether they are truly coming here for that reason or for some other reason. We have a vetting process, and we have a process by which you come through a port of entry, and you apply for entry at these places. And then they vet you to find out, if like in this situation we're in now, we're finding out that a lot of these people have been released from prisons in these countries. And this has been funded by our own government, for one, but by the United Nations, these NGO, non-governmental organizations which get funded by our own government, and by the WEF. The World Economic Forum has been funding these people to come there, because if you look at these caravans, these people, none of them look to me like they're escaping, any kind of tyranny or abject poverty. They're all wearing really nice clothes. They're toting cell phones, and they had money cards and stuff like that. Somebody was funding that. It was just to overwhelm our system here. And people, Christ talked about love and love and compassion is that, yes, we're supposed to have love and compassion for people, but they're supposed to come into our country the right way, not just storm our borders. And the scriptures has a lot to say about borders and how they are established. Yahweh Elohim establishes the borders of the nations. That's the reason, if you think about it, why isn't the United States, we've always been an aggressive, kind of warring power. And, if that being the case, why didn't we take Mexico? Why didn't we take Canada? And there's been instances where I think they were trying to, different conflicts, the Mexican-American War, and we had skirmishes with the Canadians. But Elohim has established our border, okay, all nations, and where we're supposed to live. And we can even see this going back to the time of Peleg, when he divided up the land and established nations that he is the one who determines where people live at. And I'll go through some scriptures to show this. But also it talks about people, whenever the strangers within your gates, you're supposed to be, treat them good. You're supposed to offer them something to eat. You're supposed to offer them a place to stay. But it also says that if these people do things that are in violation of the law, and of course under Elohim's law during the time of Israel's reign there in the Levant, they were instructed to take them outside of the gate and kill them. And if they got near the altar of the temple or the holy place, they were destroyed. In other words, these people, whenever they came within their gates, they were expected to obey their laws and their customs. And this is anywhere. If you went to any other nation back in those days and went into their, you were expected to obey their law and their customs. And if you weren't willing to do that, then there was a likelihood that you would be killed. And there was a reason for borders and walls and gates. It is to protect your people. Of which these people that let all these, just opened our border up and let, only Yahweh knows how many millions, tens of millions of people have stormed our borders and came across. And from what I've seen so far of footage of ICE going around rounding these people up, I mean, they have not done anything, they ain't like beating them or being inhumane to them. They're just rounding them up, putting them on planes and sending them back to their home country. And of course, they have said they're going after these violent criminals. I mean, some of them have been, convicted. One guy 17 times of crimes, some of them violent crimes, and turned around and released back into the communities. And so, anybody that thinks that those people should be allowed to remain here, there's nothing humane about it. The inhumanity is towards our own people. And we have a right to live in security and in peace. I mean, the scriptures is clear about this. Unless you begin to blatantly violate Elohim's law and you turn completely away from him, then he'll allow this stuff to happen. But, and if you notice, I mean, I've seen some footage of the border. They is just, 20, 30 mile long lines of people trying to get out, deporting themselves. Because they realize that, and they've been told, if you leave on your own and we don't have to round you up and send you back, then you can still apply for access and you can go through the process of being vetted and all that. They can still, come here legally. But there was already a lot of people ahead of them that were trying to do it the legal, lawful way. What we've seen is nothing but absolute lawlessness. And, these bleeding heart liberals and all that stuff, they can try to make people feel bad and all that, all they want. Oh, you're breaking up families and all that stuff. Well, those people, they knew they were breaking the law. But you see, the fault ultimately falls with the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, these NGOs, and the former administration for allowing this to happen to start with. They are the ones that are truly lawless and that want to violate our national sovereignty. Not just us. Look at what's going on over in Europe. They've done the same thing over there. And this is the same kind of thing. If you go and read the story of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, the same thing that they were trying to do. Establish a world government and everybody gather right up there, even after Elohim had told them, you need to spread out and repopulate the earth. And so they had to be forcibly taken and put where they were supposed to be and boundaries set. Because ultimately, he determines where we live on this. This is his world. It's not up to us to decide. It's up to him where we're going to live and who is going to rule over us. And so, look at all the people who have been killed by these drug cartels, human trafficking, smuggling, child trafficking, sex slaves. I mean, just on over 300,000 children that are missing, up to maybe 500,000 children that are missing. Nobody knows where they're at, that were given over to a lot of these NGO organizations and, the Catholic Church and others. And now nobody knows where these children are. And this guy, Tom Homan, I mean, he's supposed to be a Catholic or something. I don't know what his belief is, but he's made it clear that they're going to find these children. If they are to be found, they're going to find them. And it doesn't matter whether they're Americans or whether they're, because a lot of these children are ones that have been kidnapped from their parents and sent here with other people to just make like they're, because during the last administration, Trump administration, they were DNA testing these people, and they were finding that most of these so-called families were not families at all. These children were not theirs. Their DNA didn't match and stuff like that. I mean, so these people are for that. They're for trafficking in children. They're for all these drugs coming across over here. All these, granted, people make the choice to take drugs. But that doesn't mean we should be facilitating it. That we should be just wholesale, coming across the border with just, untold amounts of this stuff. Flooding our country. Deliberately wanting to kill our people. And so it has to be gotten control of. And it's just this kind of thing that will ultimately end up leading to some kind of an authoritarian system, is because people have become afraid. For their families, for themselves. Now, of course, I think, I don't know these people's hearts. I don't know what they believe. But, they need to repent. If they're not, they need to repent and turn away from their wickedness and relent. And then Yahuwah will relent for letting this stuff come against us. He allowed it. This is to wake people up and to get them to repent and turn away from their wickedness. And we're given this, this is an opportunity for America to make things right. Regardless of these people up here in Washington, it needs to start there, but it also needs to start with us. Because if people are righteous and living righteously, this stuff won't happen. But it's whenever we fall into debauchery and idolatry and, all of the abominable things that are going on here, that again, these people are, these people on the so-called left that are fighting for. They're fighting for abortion. They're fighting for this transhumanism, transsexual, homosexual, all that kind of stuff. Same-sex marriage and all that. Those things are an abomination. And he's going to allow this stuff to happen to us. He takes the hedge away from us. His Gader HaKodesh of protection away from us whenever we begin to live the way that America has been living. And also our wealth is being squandered away, wasted by a bloated, bureaucracy up here in Washington. Our original system of government was supposed to be very small federal government. And most of the authority and power to the states. Because it's a whole lot easier. It's just like with these natural disasters. And I agree with what Trump said the other day, President Trump. Give him the honor that he's due. He is our elected official. He said that, that they need to look at doing away with FEMA. It's an organization that has 17,000 mouths there, eating at the trough. $33 billion budget. Okay, and does nothing. They are absolutely irresponsive And most of the money that they had in their budget for emergencies and disasters has been given out to these people that have come across our border illegally. So, well, a lot of them people are, they're not breaking the law. Yeah, they broke the law when they come across the border. I mean, that's just the way it is. Our laws are, plainly laid out. It's not rocket science. Our immigration laws are laid out clearly. That it is, one, the responsibility of our government to protect our borders from invasion, and to have a system set up that is under the federal government to allow for legal immigration. And so these people, by coming across our borders without permission, without going through a legal port of entry, have broken the law. And this is not just here in America. This is law pretty much all over the world. I guarantee you that you will not go unless, like over in Europe where they've allowed that kind of stuff to go on over there. They're, because they're being controlled by the same people, the WEF, the UN, the NGOs, and all that stuff, George Soros, all these people that are funding this stuff, allowing them in, and they're destroying Europe. And they want to do the same thing here, to destroy national sovereignty. And so, my feelings on it is that the only thing they need is they need a small, little agency in Washington that oversees natural disaster disbursement. In other words, the funds. You don't need 17,000 people to do that. And each state, again, these kind of things should be handled within each state, because each state knows their territory, they know where their people are, they know how to respond, so long as they are going to respond. The government in North Carolina, the Democrats there in Raleigh, have not been responding like they should have, because they get their orders from the Democrats up there in Washington. And those people in the states, because people say, well, what? Each state's going to have to pay for their own natural. No, that's not what he said. He said that FEMA is ineffective. They're bloated, just like all the bureaucracy in Washington is bloated. That's why the founders decided that, the federal government should have very limited responsibilities. National defense, protecting our borders, interstate commerce, and a couple of other responsibilities. But they've taken everything on and stripped it away from the states. Education, and whenever the Department of Education was created back in the 1970s, that's when our educational system went to the toilet. Whenever the states were able to administer their own educational system, we had quite a bit more learned people, more actually people educated than we do now. And I mean, it's gone downhill ever since they took over. Well, they need to go away. And the tax dollars for education need to just stay in the state. It just needs to stay there where it is. And but again, with the FEMA, it's just be a small, group of people who are real experts in emergency response. And if it's necessary to where, they maybe need to mobilize like the National Guard or the Army Corps of Engineers, then they can do that. They can say, hey, we're going to send, the Army Corps of Engineers down here to put in some temporary bridges and that kind of thing. National Guard to help clean up with the debris and that kind of stuff. But most of the taking care of the people there, giving them shelter, food, that kind of stuff should be done on a local level. And they should have stationed throughout each state, should have areas where they have stuff staged, generators, water, extra additional long-term storage of food, blankets, temporary shelters, that kind of stuff. I mean, that would not be that hard to do, but it would be a whole lot more efficient and effective if it was local than from a bloated bureaucracy up here with 17,000 people that most of the time are doing nothing but shuffling paper. And so I agree with it. I agree that FEMA really needs to go. Other than, like I say, a small little agency or whatever that is actually made up of real people that know what they're doing, that have been involved in natural disasters and calamities and stuff like that, that know what to do, how to get things done. That's the kind of people you need. People that actually are there because of their merit, not because of some kind of identity. And, this is just how out of control the bureaucracy in our government has gotten. And again, I'm not, saying that by no means that Donald Trump is any kind of a saint. He's just like any other leader or any other person for that matter. He's got faults and flaws. But again, we get the leaders that Elohim determines we're going to get. And we have to, honor them, as long as they don't try to make us do something that is contrary, that will make us sin against Elohim. So we should be trying to work with them, to at least not hinder them to do the what is right. If they're doing, getting these people that are, and wanting to go, they've declared these drug cartels as terrorists because they are. And they've gotten so much control over Mexico that the Mexican government is afraid to do anything. I mean, they've gotten to where they're more militarily equipped than the Mexican government. But now that they've been declared terrorists, then they can go after them. They need to shut these people down. And I read it last week about in Romans there where it says that they don't bear the sword in vain. They're to go after evil. And that is, anybody that don't think that people that are sacrificing people in these what do they call them? Like these, Cinco de Mayo kind of rituals or whatever, where they're sacrificing people and cutting their heads off and all that kind of stuff, and drinking their blood, and trafficking in all these drugs, human trafficking, child trafficking, sex trade trafficking. I mean, everything that you can think of that is evil, these people are doing it. And so anybody that is against going after them, I mean, like the New York Times put out an article last week, I think, or in just a couple of days ago, saying that, you shouldn't, do that because that might hurt the American economy. What? Declaring these people that are terrorists. I mean, they come here in America and they kill people that, assassinate people and stuff. I mean, they commit murders here all the time. But you want to, don't, that might affect business. What? These people need to be stopped. And just like Tom Holman said, it's okay, you don't want to help us round these people up, talking to these sanctuary city governors and mayors and stuff. Okay, that's fine. We'll round them up, but don't get in our way and try to hinder us or harbor these people, because we will arrest you too. And, people are, you can't, you're going against the Constitution. No, they're not. They're not going against the Constitution because the federal government has the authority under the Supremacy Act. They have authority over immigration and immigration law, which supersedes state law. And any of these governors and all that do interfere or harbor these people, they are going to be considered just as guilty as these people who have committed crimes and that have been released by these sanctuary cities back on the streets, not prosecuted, not put in jail, not convicted of these crimes, when they know there's no denying that these people did these crimes. A lot of times they're caught in the act of doing it. And yet they are turning them right out, back onto the street to go do it again. And so, he basically said that if, just get out of our way, we're going to do it. And, however many of us it takes to come and do it, we're going to do it. You can either help us, the police and the law enforcement in those states and in those cities can help, or they can get out of the way. And if they try to hinder us, they're going to be arrested as well. And so this is where we're at. And I don't understand how anybody cannot be on board with that. Because again, if you read through scriptures, if you went into inside of a country's walls and gates, then you were to keep their law and their customs. And if you couldn't do that, you better not go there. And of course, these people do not want to keep our customs. They don't want to keep our laws. They want to break our laws. They want to do whatever they want to do, keep their own customs and, speak their own language and not learn the language, not assimilate. Then they need to go. We need to receive people here that want to obey our laws, that want to speak our language and keep our customs, and honor and respect our people. Because, that's what causes division. When you have people come here and they want to try to continue to do the things they were doing wherever they were at, I'm not saying people cannot keep their own personal, they want to, have their own food and have their own little things that remind them of their culture and all that stuff. I got no problem with that. But you are here now, and you come here with the intention of becoming an American citizen. Then you need to follow our laws and customs, and contribute. I'm not saying all them people that come across the border that a lot of them probably did. They just figured the ones that were being paid to come here. They were coming here for one purpose, to do what these people wanted them to do, come here, and get all as much of our money and resources as they could get. But there was some that probably just slid in with them and came in here. They really were coming here to try to find a job and make a better life. They just figured, well, we might as well just get in there with them. But there was a whole lot of people, and this is the thing. It's not just people from Central and South America. There's over 195 different countries that have been identified, that people coming from those countries. I've talked about this before. How did these people from China and Russia and the Middle East and all that, these so-called impoverished people, how did they get here? Where did they get the money for a plane ticket or passage on a ship to get here? I'm sure that if you got a flight from China to Honduras or somewhere down there, it would probably cost you $2,000 or $3,000. Then when you get there, you don't know where to go. Somebody's got to be telling you. And then putting them on buses, putting them on trains, and paying for it and moving them up here to the border. And probably 20, 30 miles outside of the border or whatever, out of sight, they start, getting them off and telling them to start marching up there. Oh, look, we're, a caravan. And ain't none of them caravans walked all the way from, Argentina or Chile or somewhere, walked all the way up here. They didn't. And not look in the condition that those people did. It's all been a big scam to bleed us of our money, to bankrupt us. And of course, unfortunately, in order to correct this stuff, people, as a nation, we need to repent, turn away from our wickedness and evil, do that which is right. As it says, return to the old ways, the ways of Elohim. And then he will begin to heal our land. And this, this division, and of course I can see where more and more people are moving away from the one side over to the other, and I've talked about that too, how it's driving them away because they're seeing the lies and the hypocrisy and all that kind of stuff of the one side. But they need to find the middle, the straight and narrow path. Of course, that's why I do what I do on here, is to try to get people to understand that. And so, as long as they are not treating them people inhumane, these people even tried to compare it to, Anne Frank, over in Germany in the concentration camps over there. Well, those people were citizens of Germany that were being rounded up and put into these concentration camps and stuff. They were not illegal immigrants coming across the border. And a lot of them were just people that were rounded up in other countries around there that were, I think Anne Frank was Dutch or something. And but she was rounded up along with a bunch of others from these other countries that Germany had taken over. And they were brought there and put into these concentration camps. They didn't go there of their own volition. These people are coming here of their own volition, and they are deliberately breaking our laws, our border laws. And, so there's no comparison there. And it actually demeans all those people that have died that were in those concentration camps and their families and stuff like that were rounded up and herded in there and gassed or whatever. It's just really not there's no comparison there. It's just not a good analogy. And so, and then, the Pope coming out saying, oh, it's not Christian. Well, when's the last time the Vatican over there with their 30-foot high walls and guards and gates and all that stuff has let any of them in there? They ain't let one in there. In fact, they make it clear that they're not welcome. So, you have to put your money where your mouth is. And of course, that guy is about as satanic as you can get, because he's going completely, totally against what this says here, accepting homosexuality and transgender, saying that you can get to God through any kind of belief in religion instead of the one that this says is, there's only one way, there's only one name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved, and that is Yahushua HaMashiach. No other. There ain't 50 ways to get to Elohim. There's only one. One mediator between man and Elohim, Yahushua HaMashiach, and no other. So I'm going to read a few scriptures here just to validate what I'm saying here about how territories and borders and stuff have been established, and that we're supposed to keep these. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 19 chapter 19 verse 14. And this is talking about people's landmarks, and because that has always with Elohim, that's a big thing. Thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, which they of old time have set in thine inheritance, which thou shalt inherit in the land that Yahweh thy Elohim giveth thee to possess it. You know, whenever the children of Israel went in there, Elohim drove those people out from over there. The Girgashites, the Amalekites, the Amorites, the Philistines, which the Philistines never really got fully driven out. But all of those people, he drove them out because of their practices, their abominable, idolatrous practices, and sacrificing their children and stuff. So he drove them out from before the Hebrew people. Yes, they were with him, marching with him and all that, but ultimately he's the one that drove them out and gave them the ability to conquer these people. And then he established their borders from, I think it's Kashan, over to the border of the Euphrates River. All that territory in between there. Everybody thinks it's just that little sliver over there in the Levant. Well, it wasn't. It was from the Nile River to the Euphrates River. And then it tells about how far south that they went. They went down to, I think it bordered down to, Ammon was allowed to keep their territory. Edom was allowed to keep their territory, and Moab. They went up around and like this and like this, down and up and around over to the Euphrates River, and then back up around, up through the border with Syria, and then the border of Lebanon, up there around Baalbek and Mount Hermon, right in there, across and over. That was the Hebrew people's territory. And then people were driven out because of their practices. They were living in abomination. And so you can see that this is going back to Deuteronomy here, where Moses was instructing them on, about how things, like legal things that people deal with on a daily basis, like where the next verse after that's talking about, let a matter be established out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. You don't out of one. Because if you just got one witness, it may just be this guy's got a grudge against you and he's falsely accusing you just because he don't like you or something. So you need to have at least 2 to 3 witnesses. And they got to be credible. They have to be people that their word is known to be true. You can't take some like the way they do now, the law and all that. They'll go up there in the jail up there and grab some guy up and say, look, man, we'll knock 6 months off your sentence if you'll testify against this guy that he was over here or he did this. That should be illegal. There should have to be at least 2 credible witnesses against you. And I hope that gets dealt with. The 2-tiered justice system and the corrupt justice system. I guess we'll wait and see. But again, unless Americans begin to live rightly, and I think a lot of people do want to. They want to live right, but they a lot of the religious system that they refer to for their goodness has gone astray from what's written in this. And they need to get on the right track and stop listening to these people that preach out of these modern adulterated versions of Scripture that take out the Scriptures that they don't like, that don't hold up to their doctrine. Whether you like it or not, this is Elohim's law and it's his word. And he's given us instructions on how we are to live, how we are to relate to him, and how we're to relate to each other. And we need to learn how to be obedient to him and walk in his ways. And he'll help us to do that if we allow him. But we have to submit to him at first in order for that to happen. But again, here's another one. This is in Judges chapter 11, verse 18. Then they went along through the wilderness and compassed the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came by the east side of the land of Moab, and pitched on the other side of Arnon, but came not within the border of Moab, for Arnon was the border of Moab. And Israel sent messengers unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon, and Israel, and said unto him, Let us pass, we pray thee, through thy land into my place. But Sihon trusted not Israel to pass through his coast. But Sihon gathered all his people together and pitched in Jahaz, and fought against Israel. And Yahweh Elohim of Israel delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they smote them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country. Now see, they lost their land because they would not allow Israel to pass through it. If they'd have let them go through, they would have been allowed to keep their territory and their land and been okay. And if you notice, Israel did not go into the land of Moab. They did not go into the land of Edom. They passed by it because they were told not to mess with them, that was their territory, to leave them alone. And it would have been the same way with these people. They would have just went on through there and went to where they were going, and that would have been that. But they chose to do wrong against them. They came against Israel, and of course Yahweh let Israel to defeat them and then take their land. When a country does, and of course Moab and Ammon and Edom and them, they were, not righteous people or anything like that, but Elohim had determined that was their territory, and that there'd be a time and place for dealing with them in his time. But that just goes to show you, the importance of boundaries is that, as long as a nation, doesn't do anything contrary against the another country that the Father has established, unless he initiates it, like he did with Babylon coming against Judah and taking them into captivity, or Assyria against the house of Israel, because they were living unrighteously. They were supposed to be his nation that he was using to be a light to the rest of the world, and they were not doing it. They went just the opposite. And so they ended up losing their territory. It's just the way that it works. Okay, and now we're going to look here in 2 Samuel chapter 8, and I believe it's verse 3. Yep. David smote also Hadad-Ezer, the son of Rahab, king of Zobah, as he went to recover his border at the river Euphrates. Now, this was people that were driven out, but they thought they were going to come back and take their territory back. And, of course, David smote them, and him and his mighty men or whatever at the river Euphrates, because that was their land. That was their border, was the Euphrates River. And of course he seized all of their stuff, their chariots and horses and all that. And then we got 2 Kings, and 2 Kings 14:25. He restored the coast of Israel from the entering of Hamath unto the sea of the plain, according to the word of Yahweh Elohim of Israel, which he spake by the hand of his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, which was of Gath-Hepher. And so, here is another instance where some of these people had taking back some of the land of Israel or whatever in one of these, the Philistines or somebody like that. And of course, it ended up, that Israel was able to get their land back. And because they had border markers, I mean, that's what I was talking about earlier about not moving people's markers. Even, these ancient markers. I mean, some of them that go way back, they're still there. You can go over to a lot of these countries over in the Middle East, and there's these big stone markers there. I mean, they've been there for thousands of years, and they're still there because that's a big thing with him. That and measures and weights and stuff. He's you don't like dishonesty, and deceit. And here we're going to look in Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 22. Moreover, thou gavest them kingdoms and nations, and didst divide them into corners. So they possessed the land of Sihon, and the land of the king of Heshbon, and the land of Og, king of Bashan. In other words, he gave them these nations and kingdoms, took them over, and didst divide them into corners, so they possessed the land. And then he divided it up among the tribes. They each had their own territory when they went in there. Of course, they had, they discussed it, and some of them said, well, can we have this land over here? That's the land we've been eyeing, like with Gideon, and where when him and Joshua went out with the 12 spies, to spy out the land. And they came back and said, yeah, we can take it, let's go do it. And the other ones were cowering and, we run up on these giants and we're like grasshoppers in our sight and in theirs also. Well, Gideon was like, no, I want to go back and I want to take that land. I want that land that them giants are on over there. And so he got that land as a part of his inheritance. And then there was some that decided that they wanted to be on the other side of Jordan there. I think some of the might have been Naphtali or somebody like that they liked that land there. They were herdsmen or whatever, and it was good grazing land, and that's what they wanted, so that's what they got. And then we'll look here in Psalm 74:17. Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter. And so, he has set all the borders of the earth. All of them. And so, and that's one of the reasons why you never, at least as far as we know from here in modern times, like with the Persians and the Medes and the Greeks, they never really conquered the Far East. They never conquered them people because they had their boundaries and their territory, and it just wasn't Elohim's will that these people were able to conquer them. They were kept in their own territory. They were allowed to conquer the peoples in their own territories and in their own area. Here again in Proverbs 23:28, remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. And, so it's because he's got these boundaries. He set these boundaries in ancient times, back in the time of Peleg and all, and they need to stay where they're at. And it's still true today. And now I'm going to look here in Ezekiel 47, chapter 13. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, this shall be the border whereby ye shall inherit the land according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph shall have two portions, which was Ephraim and Manasseh. And of course it goes all out, and if you read after that, the rest of the chapter there, it'll tell you what each one of them's territory was and what their boundaries were. You know, this rock or this mountain or this river or this stream is your southern border, and this river is your eastern border, and you know that's how they laid it out and divided it up, and according to the size of their tribes. You know, obviously, the more people they had, the more territory they needed, and then each one of these were required to give the priests, the Levites, a place for a synagogue or for a city of refuge. They were to give them so many cities or whatever, and because they had no inheritance. Their inheritance was the priesthood. Okay, and then we'll look here in Acts. This is Acts chapter 17, verse 26. And it says, "And hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the time before appointed and the bounds of their habitation." And so we can see there that he determines the bounds of people's habitation and where they're going to live. And if you want to go into another, you know, just like there with Israel, and that's why the Amorites, they were defeated, was because Israel sent somebody to their king and asked him for permission to pass through their land, and they refused to do it. And in fact, they come and attacked them, and they ultimately ended up losing their territory and being, you know, pretty much wiped out for doing it. If they'd left them alone, let them go, you know, let them pass through their land peaceably and get to their own territory, then they would have kept their territory. And so we have borders that were established, you know, even though we don't see the hand a lot of times of Elohim, we can know that the boundaries that we have are, you know, were established by him, you know, the boundaries of the United States. And that we got to remember that he has established these boundaries, and is up to the people that he puts over us to do what's right about protecting the people and securing our borders. And now that there's somebody that's willing to do that, that's willing to do the things that are necessary to secure our border and protect the people, I don't understand how people can be against it unless they had some kind of ulterior motive for it. In other words, somehow or another they're profiting off of, and it's, you know, it's not just the fact that these, you know, about the criminals and stuff like that, but a lot of these people are just being shuffled around and put, you know, they've been pumped up, believing, oh yeah, you know, you know, and because I've seen the legitimate footage of people that were, you know, getting, and they even said it. I mean, they were interviewing some of these people, and they were saying, oh yeah, they were calling the EBT cards, the food stamp cards or whatever, they were calling the magic card. They said, we spend the money on there and it just keeps coming back on there. It's magic. But that don't happen for people here that are struggling. I mean, these people that are in you know, the homeless, a lot of that's all been contrived. Like there in California, they do that so that they can try to get more money out of the federal government for these people, but then yet they're not doing anything. I mean, I think that supposedly out there in California, they had $28 billion that was supposed to be for the homeless, to put these homeless people in some place, you know, home somewhere. And not a bit of it went to them. And I think it was 20 years ago that Gavin Newsom said, oh yeah, we're going to have poverty, you know, within 10 years we're going to have no homeless people on the streets. Well, here it is 20 years later, and there's way more on the street than there were then. So what happened? Well, it's a big grift. You know, it's you create all of these bloated programs and stuff, and none of the money ever gets. It's just like whenever we give money to these little third world countries to their leadership, they're supposed to go help their people, you know, feed them or bring them clean water and stuff like that right there, and none of it ever reaches them. It always goes into the pockets of a bunch of tyrants or people at the top. And it's the same thing that's been going on in our federal government, is a big grift. I mean, they create all these little programs and these bills and all for these things, and a lot of times that money just comes right back into their own pockets or into the pockets of people who have give to their campaigns or, you know, help them get elected and stuff like that. That stuff needs to stop. I mean, that's our money. I mean, it's we work for it and we pay these taxes. And most of the working people in this country can't even hardly afford to live. And that's why. And it's all by design. It's not like it's something that, you know, just a few here and there or you know, no, it's the whole system has been set up to do this. You know, the deep state. And the bureaucracy, the bureaucrats, the ones that are there for 30 years, that are appointed a lot of times, are put into these positions by these grifters, perpetuate it. They perpetuate it. I mean, and they even had one on an interview, a secret interview. They didn't realize he was being recorded, but he was in the Health and Human Services that they're trying to get RFK Jr. put in there. And they said, well, you know, we will just eat him up with bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is there to hinder anybody that really wants to make changes. To, you know, they will drag stuff out. They will slow walk it. They'll do, you know, he said the system will crush him. Well, no, it won't crush him if he gets rid of most of them. I mean, you know, none of these agencies needs tens and tens of thousands of people to implement these programs. It's just not necessary. And of course, my feeling is that what's going to happen is these people are going to come, you know, and it's just part of what's going to happen. They're going to be replaced. They're going to be replaced with AI. Just that simple. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why Elon Musk is so involved in what's going on up there. And now this Stargate program, they're talking about $500 billion to expand AI and expand and build these huge AI data centers. And not only that, but I think they're going to start building these compact nuclear reactors to power these things, because they use a tremendous amount of energy and water for cooling. And our grid is already pretty much tapped out. And then you got these people that are like, oh, we need to use solar and, you know, wind and all that stuff. But, you know, I've looked into the solar and wind and all that stuff. I've been kind of following that stuff for years, and it's incredibly inefficient. It destroys the land from the mining to get the rare earth minerals. And it's a toxic manufacturing process for this stuff. It uses pretty much just the energy used to make these things is more than the energy that they will ever generate. Then they are at the mercy of the elements, the wind and the sun. Only a short period of time that they're actually producing any energy. Then these big windmills, these big turbine generators, wind turbines, they are dangerous. They're dangerous to wildlife, and I've seen just countless videos, pictures from the news. I'm talking about news clips and stuff where these things flying apart, them big blades, and they can't dispose of them. They're not recyclable or anything. And then these big turbines, they use, you know, 1,500, 2,000 gallons of oil in them to cool them. And sometimes they come apart and that oil goes everywhere. And when one of them things comes apart, you know, you don't want to have your house or anything nowhere near where one of these things is. I mean, they'll sling them blades for 2 or 3 miles. And, I mean, come crashing down into your house, and then they just ugly. They destroy the scenic beauty of the area that they're in. And then these solar panels, they just take up tremendous amounts of land to generate really not anything. I mean, realistically, there is no alternative to produce large scales of amounts of energy other than oil and gas and coal and nuclear. And if it's about cleanliness and carbon, then nuclear is obviously the ideal energy source. I mean, it produces a tremendous amount of energy and does not have any greenhouse gases and all that stuff. Now, you do have the issue of the nuclear waste, but the nuclear waste is really not that, I mean, over the life of one of these things, if it's stored properly, I mean, they usually wind up with about 40 or 50,000 pounds of uranium rods, these spent rods, over the lifetime of one of these nuclear facilities, which is about 40 to 50 years. And now they've even developed ways to reuse those rods, those spent rods. They can reuse them in what they call fast breeder reactors and stuff. So it's, you know, as long as it's handled properly. I mean, you really don't want to be building nuclear reactors on the coast where, like over there at Fukushima, you can have a tidal wave come in there and wipe it out and cause a meltdown or something. No, you don't want to do that. But, you know, most of these systems that we have over here in America, I mean, they've been built with huge containment systems. I mean, I watched the building of a nuclear power plant. The containment building walls were like 10 feet thick of the most highly reinforced concrete. I'm talking about rebar that big around as your leg. And, you know, they estimate that you could run a 747 jet aircraft into it and it would not damage it. So, you know, there is ways to generate, you know, and of course, gas and oil. My feeling about that is that I just don't think that the amount that we humans generate, is really nothing in comparison to these volcanoes and stuff that go off. I mean, you can have one volcano erupt, like a Mount Pinatubo, that sits there and spews stuff out for 20 years, and it puts out more in that 20 years than we put out since we've had automobiles. I mean, so, you know, it's another big grift. It's another big grift to get our money. And they've wasted, I don't know how many trillions of dollars on this stuff here in America, these electric vehicle mandates and solar panels and wind generators. Okay, if you want to put in solar panels, if you got land and you want to put them in there and you want to use these wind mills, then by all means do it. But you do it on your own dime. Don't ask the federal government for subsidies. You know, if you can't put these things in and make them profitable and all, then you shouldn't be doing it. And that's just it. They can't. They're not profitable. They can never, they are never able to have a profitable ROI or return on investment. They just aren't. And then the problem of disposing of these things. These solar panels are full of toxic stuff. And they have maybe at best a 20-year lifespan. And after that, you got to dispose of them. And that stuff's going to be leaching out into the ground and everywhere else. So why, you know, it's just not really, in my opinion, a viable option. Now, if they were a lot more efficient, in other words, if you had solar panels that could convert sunlight into energy at 80 or 90% efficiency, I'd say, yeah, that's good. But when it's 10 to 20%, and the actual overall expense, when you look at the energy that it takes to make them, the degradation of the land from mining for the minerals and stuff, the transporting of them from somewhere like China or whatever on ships, the oil that ships use or whatever to ship that stuff over here, the installation cost, the maintenance cost, it just really isn't worth it. And so I think that, if private businesses want to do it, want to invest in it, and they think they can make money on it, okay, that's fine. But don't, see what it is that there's one of these guys over at the World Economic Forum at Davos. He came out and said, look, we've been making $1 billion a year in profit or whatever. And we were saying we were going to be at that point or revenue or whatever in 2026, but we reached that goal in 2025 because, we're getting these subsidies. But would that be the case if he wasn't getting the subsidies? No, it wouldn't be. It would not be a viable investment. Because if it was, they wouldn't ask for any kind of incentives from the government. They would just do it. Private business will always, if something is profitable and can be done, at a reasonable cost, and then they'll do it. And they won't need an incentive because they know they're going to make a profit on it. That's the whole idea behind capitalism. And why it's much more efficient than any government. Government's not supposed to be in that stuff. And so, they're supposed to be doing what they're doing now, which is defending our borders, securing our borders, defending them, and getting these people that are here illegally out of here. And of course, Tom Hummond said, well, what about the women and children? Well, they came here with them. They can go back with them. And, in these countries that say, well, we're not going to take them. Well, yeah, they'll take them. Because, okay, don't take them. But that $30 billion that you wanted from us, no. Or that stuff you want to sell over here, nope. I mean, you have to use the carrot and stick. And, my thing is with that is that, one, instead of going down there in these countries and trying to prop them up, some dictator or whatever, CIA or whatever, going down there and causing color revolutions and all that stuff, what we need to do is encourage them to elect people in there who are going to do things for their best interest. I mean, look at Javier Milei down there in Argentina. I mean, he's really turning that place around. I mean, he got rid of all but like 12 of the agencies in their government. I mean, just got rid of them. And began oil exports, and I mean, they've gone way up, and their trade surplus has gone way up, and their inflation is starting to come down. Of course, people say, people are suffering and all this. Yeah, well, it's going to be. I mean, when you got runaway inflation that was happening, and I mean, the grift that was going on in their government, when you go to correcting this stuff, yeah, some people are going to be suffering for a little while, but whenever it's all completed, and they said that the inflation's coming down, and they're creating wealth, and they're creating jobs for people that will lift them out of poverty. And that's what needs to happen here. We've got too many, and it's the monkey see, monkey do. The government's doing all this grift and all that stuff. Well, then the people begin to do the same thing. Well, why should I work? I'm just going to lay around and get me a check, and, I'm going to, heck with going to work. And I'm not opposed to helping people, man. I mean, if I can help somebody and they're in need, I will help them. And I think that we should, but I think that really is one of those things that should be done locally. People shouldn't be dependent on the federal government to hand them out. It should be done by these churches that say they're Christian. Well, if they are, then they are the ones that are supposed to be doing this. They're supposed to be helping their communities. They're supposed to be helping their neighbors. Helping them to weather the storm. And if for some reason or other a person is disabled, I mean really truly disabled and unable to work at a physical job or something like that, there's still things that people can learn to do that doesn't require physical work. They can answer a phone, they can stuff envelopes, they can, there's things that people can do without having to resort to a government handout or whatever, that they can be gainfully employed, but they're not out here picking up sacks of concrete or cement blocks or, cutting timber or something like that. Well, then they can do something that doesn't require that and still, and probably live better than they would if they're getting this, because the government, believe me, they're going to give you the minimum, that they can get by with. And unless you're illegal coming over here, then they'll give you $10,000 worth of food stamps and $20,000 worth of cash on your magic card, at the expense of people who are suffering. And so the other thing is, and of course I talked about this last week, it might be just a big setup. Everything will get to where it's really going good, and then they'll spring the old AI and the implantable chip and all that stuff. You got to do this, digital currency and all. Wouldn't surprise me, but I think they announced, Trump did or somebody, for one, this guy, he's Japanese. He is like the chairman of SoftBank, which is a large, one of the most valuable and largest companies in Japan. And it's not a bank, it's a conglomerate, but they said they're going to invest $500 billion into the United States for manufacturing facilities and stuff to put people to work. And what I understand, it was also in the pipelines that something like $6 trillion that's going to be invested for manufacturing. We've got to get back to making our own stuff. Look at, as an example, during this COVID stuff, if we really did need masks, if we really did need sterilization stuff and all that stuff, it's made somewhere else. And they just basically, sorry, we're not sending you any, we need it ourselves. And a lot of times it's American companies that have facilities that are making this stuff over there, but yet we're not getting any of it. And the same thing with medications, and of course I got a problem with a lot of the medications, but there is some life-saving drugs and stuff that are can be very beneficial, on a temporary basis, to where until people can actually correct the underlying causes of their illness and correct that. But I think we need to have that stuff back here, and decent, good paying jobs that people can do that will actually allow them to live, and provide for their families and stuff like that without, and being able to have a home and, being able to just live. But we all need to contribute, we all need to be partakers of bringing or lifting up our people, doing what's right. And because it settles down ultimately on the individual doing their part, doing what's right, looking out for your neighbors. And who is your neighbor? Anybody who is in need. And if the problem is they have done a great job of destroying communities and families. We need to encourage, like over there in Hungary, Viktor Orban. He had a lot of laws passed over there that really emphasized the family, that emphasizes having children, and being married, and building a strong family and having strong family values, and belief in Elohim and Yahushua. And so we need to see that kind of thing here, where we have instead of trying to destroy our families and break them apart and use government programs to keep them apart, we should be encouraging them to be married, to have children, to be productive. We should have an educational system that actually teaches our children teaches them morals, the commandments, to be good citizens, to look out for their neighbors, to understand how our system of government is supposed to work, stuff like that. How to be financially responsible. I mean, there's nothing wrong with these things. These are all biblical principles. Because whenever you become indebted, you become a servant to the holder of the debt. And it's been pushed up, it's been being funneled up into the hands of a very, fewer and fewer people who only have bad intentions for us. And they use this money to further their agenda. People like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, the Federal Reserve Bank. These people are not our friends. They are out to destroy us, to have their technocracy. I mean, and they don't make no bones about telling you this. People like Bill Gates, Ted Turner, all these people, they come right out basically and tell you what their intention is. Oh yeah, we got to get the world's population down below 500 million, maybe possibly 200 million. What? And how do you intend on doing that? And who is it you're going to choose has to go? I mean, that would be like 7.5 billion people need to go. And the truth of the matter is that you could take the entire population of the world and put them in the state of Texas. And they could, operate. I mean, yeah, it'd be crowded, don't get me wrong, but I mean, they could still move around and do stuff. So this argument that the earth is, overcrowded is a big lie. The earth can hold a whole lot more people than what it's got on it now. The problem is just the mismanagement and misuse of the land and the abuse of the land. That's the problem. For greed. And people owning, millions, individuals owning millions of acres of land that they hoard up to themselves. When the government is, has, hundreds of millions of acres of land that they have taken over for national parks and animal preserves and all that kind of stuff. I mean, all over, that people can't access, can't use. So the argument that there's not enough land is really a false argument. But this is how these people operate, and that's why they've done these things, because I think a lot of times they want to try to get civil war started or get armed conflicts going on and all that kind of stuff. But we don't need to buy into it or fall into it. We need to obey the law, and we need to obey Elohim, His law, first and foremost. And we need to come under these people who are in authority over us, and unless they start trying to get us to do something that's a sin against Elohim. But otherwise, if it's legal and lawful, we're to come under their law, man's law too. I mean, Christ made it clear. Give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and that unto Elohim which is Elohim's. And these people that are fighting against the what the people have actually, most of the people want. They want the government to be reduced, the federal government to, because they become tyrannical. They want it to be reduced, their power diminished, and returned back to the states. And the legal system to be just. I mean, how can anybody not want that? I mean, and I'm this is coming from somebody that's, a convicted felon. I mean, I've never been against law and order and all that. I've just made some mistakes, I mean, but I've never been against law and order when it is just. When the system is not two-tiered like what we're seeing today, where the people at the very top, the cream, they're not held accountable for what they do, but we are. And that accountability should be across the board. Everybody, if you break the law, whether you're a little peon like me or whether you're one of these muckety mucks up at the top, the law should apply equally. And so, everybody should be on board with that. There shouldn't be anybody against that. Again, unless they try to pass a law that is commanding you or trying to make you go against the law of Yahuwah Elohim or against our Mashiach Nagid, Yahushua HaMashiach. Otherwise, we are to come under their authority and obey their law. And it's, most of the time it's for our own good. Of course, I'd say that they could get rid of a lot of these laws because a lot of them are arcane and they really don't apply today. They just kind of convolute and make the law hard for people to understand or even realize that they're breaking the law or something like that. I mean, it's just so many of them. They could get rid of probably a couple million of these laws and be fine. I mean, but it's to keep the lawyers in jobs. And there's a lot of them. We don't need no more lawyers. I'll just be honest with you. That's the last thing. And, we need to encourage our young people to go into the trades and, they can make a good living and have a decent, life as far as financial security. I was a tradesman and I've done all right. And, I think that they would be better off than going to one of these indoctrination centers they call a university that is, extreme woke and extreme socialist. Get away from that stuff. And get something that's really has real value and real application to real life. I mean, instead of having a doctorate in gender studies. Go out here and become a plumber or electrician or something that actually has real world application. But anyway, I've kind of went off on a little tangent there, with all this stuff. But I would think that most people would want to have secure borders and to have their families safe and to know who find out who these people are and. To know who's coming into the country and vet them because, they could be terrorists. They could be, trying to undermine or subvert our country. And, meaning to do us extreme harm. Right? And again, a lot of it comes from the reason that there's so much hatred against us is because of the things our own government has done. Going around and stirring up all this trouble around the world and getting into every conflict that comes along. We're not the world's police. And in these countries, if they want to get in a squabble, as long as it stays between them, that's their business. I don't encourage it. I don't want people killing one another and all that stuff, but, it's not our place to other than maybe diplomatically, we might try to step in and negotiate a peace between them. Or something, but to just intervene and go over and start, dropping bombs on people or, taking over the country because they want to get a hold of their banks, their central banks, or they want to, take and seize their resources and all that stuff needs to stop. We need to be contented with the place that we have here, the land that we've been given a great, beautiful and abundant and vast land here. And we should be contented with that. And have a defense that can defend our homeland from, our people that want to be enemies with us. To defend, we have a right to defend ourselves as people, so long as we're not bothering other people. We need to leave them alone. It's not our place to, dictate to these people what to do. And, it's this one thing, they've tried to, this, globalist bunch has tried to shove a one-size-fits-all ideology, the demonic ideology onto the world and say you're going to take it whether you like it or not. And, and of course, a lot of the people that's been in our government has been going along and facilitating that very agenda. And of course, now you got somebody in here that's actually standing up against it. Now, where it's going to lead, I don't know. Again, it's both the right hand and left hand path. I just want to be at peace with all men as much as it is possible to be at peace with other people. Even my enemies, I'd just soon be at peace with them. And, and for those that want to come here legally, I'm all for it. A lot of the people that are here come from other places, but they need to come here the legal way. They need to, work towards becoming a citizen. They need to learn to speak the language. They need to assimilate. And not be troublemakers, not be trying to stir up stuff, not trying to divide our country. Because that's what's happened. You get these little groups coming in, they all want their own thing, and they start dividing us, and of course a house divided can't stand. So with that, I'm going to get off the subject, but I just wanted to bring it up about, that Elohim has established borders, and that we have a right to defend and protect our borders, and people do not have the right to just come storm across our border in the middle of the night with ill intentions, trafficking children, trafficking women, smuggling drugs, smuggling weapons, and everything else in here. They just found I think it was 10,000 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition and 20 or 30,000 rounds of some kind of other high-powered arm down there at the border. Somebody trying to bring it in. Why? And where was it going? And who was getting it? And what was their intentions for using it? 50 caliber? That's like that's like military stuff, man. That's the kind of stuff that go through armor. And so, I don't see why anybody would think that is not something that we should be stopping. But, I don't know nothing. I'm just a lowly, storekeeper. I don't have no fancy degrees on the wall or nothing like that. But common sense is common sense, and right is right and wrong is wrong. And what these people have done for the last 4 years has been wrong. And I got no problem with somebody that is trying to correct it. And to try to bring some, sense back to things and, common sense. And we just have to watch and see what plays out. But, I'm not going to do anything to hinder it. And, I'm not going to go trying to get bounties to round these people up and all that stuff. But if I saw one of them and I knew they were illegal or whatever, well, then I would turn them in. Because they're breaking the law. And you got to stand up for what's right, and that's standing up for what's right. If somebody's come here illegally, they say, well, these people are not breaking the law. They're just here to get a job. Well, they already done broke the law. They broke the law when they come across that border down there illegally, without going through the legitimate process at a port of entry to be allowed to come into our country, to be vetted, to find out, is this guy part of a terrorist cell, from Hezbollah or Hamas or ISIS or somebody, or, a CCP spy. I think we kind of need to know that. And I guarantee you, if me or you left here and went to another country and asked to be allowed to stay there seeking asylum or whatever. They're gonna require you to go through all kinds of hoops, man. You're gonna have to be vetted. You're gonna have to go through all of this process before you get a green card or whatever to be able to stay there. And then over time, they're gonna look into it. And if you don't have a legitimate claim of asylum, they're gonna put you on a plane and send you back where you come from. That's just the way it is. But we're not expected to do that. We're not expected to protect our borders. But you go anywhere else in the world, and I guarantee you ain't coming into their country. You go to China, go to Russia, go over to Israel. Look at Israel. I mean, they've got the most heavily defended borders in the world. And go to any other country. And you ain't going to just walk into their country and, go to living there without them knowing about it and them saying you can. Otherwise, they're going to, they're liable to lock you up or liable to shoot you or something. So, I mean, we have the same right. And so with that, I'm going to get off of my soapbox and just, think about this, folks. I mean, when I talk about these kind of things, I just want people to think about it and, study your scriptures, see what scripture has to say about it. And just like I talked about the other week about coming under those who are in authority over you, the scriptures pretty much covers pretty much any human interaction that you can, think about. It's going to have something to say about it. Because this is not nothing new, folks. I mean, this is an ancient thing, and it goes back a long ways. And of course, Elohim set these boundaries, and so that people could live in peace. And but of course, there's people that and He uses them. He uses people to correct other people. Like I said, like Assyria, Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. He uses these people to correct people who are going south. That are, against Elohim and His ways. He uses them for correction. And sometimes this stuff that's going on, that may be what that is a type of correction to try to get America to wake up and, sort of like with Jonah going to Nineveh, giving people a chance to, okay, you see how bad it can get. And now I've given you an opportunity here to make things right, to clean things up, and to start living right by your own people. And if you don't, then I'm going to let worse happen to you next time. Just that simple. And so I love you, folks. I appreciate all of you. Pray all of you will be barach. That you will have a good rest of your week coming up. As always, be good Bereans. Keep 2 Timothy 2:15. Study to make yourself approved, a workman unto Elohim, who need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Study your scriptures. Pray. Fast, which is good for your health. And, try to be productive and a contributor to the betterment of our country and our people. One, by living it as an example. Don't stand up and be pushing it out, tooting your own horn, but just let your actions and your ways be a testimony. You don't have to get out here like the scribes and the Pharisees with the broad phylacteries and your long hymns on your garments and all that stuff like that, and saying big long prayers on the street corner. No, just let your works, your fruits, be evident by the way that you treat people, the way that you interact with people, the way that you help people. That's how we set an example for others. That's how we let our light shine, is through our fruits And what are the fruits? That is love, temperance, self-control, patience, contentment. That's how. And so I hope that this has been an interesting topic for you, since we all are experiencing these things. These are all things that are happening right around us, and we need to be aware of it. We need to keep our heads on a swivel, and be aware of things around us, because a lot of times with this going on, it might cause people to start lashing out, violently and all. We need to be prepared to protect our families and stuff. We have an obligation to take care of our families and to defend them, and that's righteous. Nothing wrong with that. Defending the weak and those who are unable to defend themselves. And so, with that, I love you, and I'll see you again on the next Shabbat, if Yahuwah is willing.